How's it going, gentlemen? Happy to be back again. Last video we did was why preach the gospel? Why do we need to preach the gospel? And we covered St. Francis of Assisi's quote, preach the gospel always, use words if necessary. Hopefully we've thrown that out and we've logged that away with useless information, knowing full well that we need to be preaching the gospel. However, if we don't have an object or a subject to that preaching, we've got a problem. So this video is about who do we preach the gospel to? Now there's three different people, in my mind, that the gospel needs to be preached to. The very first is obviously the unsaved. The individuals who don't know who Jesus is. Whether that be an atheist, an agnostic, an individual who just doesn't care or hasn't been introduced to the gospel. You are going to be, and you very well may be, the only Bible that that person may ever read. Their only taste of what Jesus is like may come from your words and the way you love on them and the way that you care for them and the way you teach them and speak to them and build them up. All of these things that we read about in the pastoral books, all of those things may be the Bible that they read from you. So obviously the first one is the unsaved, right? The second is the unchurched, right? We live in a Christian nation. We've known Christianity to be here since the inception of this great country, right? But there's a lot of people here who are really unchurched. You know, we use words like sanctification, salvation, all of these Christianese words, and we just throw them out there, and people get confused, and they have no idea what we're saying. That's an unchurched individual. They need you, when you preach that gospel to them, to break it down in such a way where they can understand it. They need to know that they're dead in their sins, regardless of how good they think they are. And you got to walk them through that process in a loving way to demonstrate that. And third, I think the most important one here, I saved it for the end. Who needs to hear the gospel? You and I do. We need to preach the gospel to ourselves daily. The church needs to hear the gospel daily. The further we drift away from preaching the gospel to our own hearts on the daily, every day, forgiveness of sin, redemption, grace, sanctification, living a life that is passionate and powerful for God, those things, when we lose sight of those things and we begin to drift further and further away from God, before you know it, you'll be someplace you won't even recognize it. You'll be so far from the Lord. I know, because I've been there. I've experienced it myself, is stop preaching that gospel to myself. Preach the gospel. Use your words. Use everything that God gives you, your testimony, your life, your actions, your ethics, everything that God has given you. You use that and you fight. And you fight with passion and grace and season it with love and demonstrate Jesus to the unsaved, the unchurched, and preach that gospel every day to your own heart.